I found out my dying son wasn't mine. But what I did next shocked everyone. It was supposed to be an ordinary Sunday morning. Just me and my boy, Tommy. We lived in a quiet neighborhood outside Portland, Oregon. Every Sunday, no matter the weather, we had our ritual, a father and son bike ride. I'd grab 2 bottles of water, he'd grab his old blue helmet with the Spider-Man sticker, and we'd race down the trail that ran along the Willamette River. That morning, the sky was clear, the air smelled of wet pine after last night's rain, and Tommy was full of life. He was 10, full of questions, always talking, always laughing. "Come on, Dad. You're too slow," he shouted, pedaling ahead. I grinned. "Slow? You're just cheating with those long legs." He laughed. God, that sound. I hadn't heard anything so pure since Susan died. Susan. Even after all these years, saying her name still felt like pressing on a bruise. She'd been gone for 7 years now. Pneumonia. One of those sudden cruel things. She got sick, and within a week, she was gone. Since then, it's just been me and Tommy. I thought I knew pain back then, losing her. But that morning, I learned there are worse kinds of pain. The kind that tears you open from the inside. We were halfway through the park, near the Hawthorne Bridge, when it happened. A blue pickup truck, Ford, maybe a 2005, rolled out from a side street. The driver was looking down at his phone. I yelled, "Tommy, stop." He turned his head, just for a second, and then the truck hit him. The sound was sharp, unreal, like the world cracked. His bike flew to one side, and Tommy's small body hit the pavement hard. I ran. I don't even remember dropping my bike. When I reached him, there was blood on his forehead, his leg bent wrong. He tried to breathe but couldn't. "Tommy. Stay with me, buddy, stay with me," I begged, pressing my hands against the wound. I called 911, my voice barely working. When the ambulance arrived, I was still talking to him, whispering, "You're gonna be fine, kiddo. I promise. You're gonna be fine." They loaded him into the ambulance. A paramedic turned to me, young guy, serious face. "Sir, we're taking him to St. Mary's Medical Center. He might need spinal surgery. Do you know if you're a compatible donor?" "Take my blood," I said instantly. "Whatever he needs." He nodded, and the doors slammed shut. At the hospital, everything blurred, lights, voices, the smell of antiseptic. They took my blood samples, and I waited in the hallway outside the ER. I could hear the faint hum of machines, the sound of sneakers squeaking on the floor. Time stopped existing. All I could think was, "Please, God, don't take my boy too." Then the door opened, and a doctor walked in, tall man in his 50s with a tired face. His badge said Dr. Myers. "Mr. Harrison?" "Yes." He looked angry. Not worried, angry. "Why did you lie to us?" My heart dropped. "What? What are you talking about? You said you're the child's father." "I am," I said. "I'm his dad." He slammed the clipboard onto the counter. "Then explain this. Your blood type is B negative. His is O positive. That's biologically impossible. You are not his biological father." For a second, I thought he was joking. I actually laughed. "That's ridiculous. There must be a mistake." He crossed his arms. "There's no mistake. I checked twice. If we're going to find a marrow donor, we need to locate the real father, fast." He turned and walked out, leaving me frozen. The hallway spun around me. The words echoed in my skull. Not his father. I felt like the floor disappeared. I thought of every moment with Tommy, his first steps, the time he broke his arm at the playground, the nights we built blanket forts in the living room after Susan died. How could I not be his father? I stumbled to the nearest chair, gripping my head. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely breathe. When I finally got up, I walked down the hall and stopped at Tommy's room. Through the glass, I saw him, pale, hooked up to wires, tiny in that huge hospital bed. He looked up, eyes fluttering open. "Dad?" I pressed my hand against the glass. My voice cracked. I'm here, buddy. I'm right here. And right there, in that moment, I decided I needed answers. If Susan had lied to me, I had to know why. I left the hospital, the cold October air hitting me like a punch. I got into my old Chevy Silverado, turned the ignition, and just drove. There was only one place to go: Salem, the town where Susan grew up. Her parents, Ellen and Brandon, still lived there in a white house with a green porch, the same one we used to visit on holidays. It was a 2-hour drive down I-5 South. The sky darkened, and the rain started, thick, heavy, relentless. The windshield wipers squeaked in rhythm with my heartbeat. As I drove, memories came flooding back. I met Susan 14 years ago at a small coffee shop in Eugene, Brood Awakening Cafe. She was studying literature at the university, sitting by the window, reading some thick novel. I spilled coffee on myself trying to talk to her. She laughed, helped me clean up, and somehow, we ended up spending the whole afternoon together. She was everything I wasn't: calm, grounded, full of light. 3 months later, she told me she was pregnant. It felt fast, but I loved her. We got married in a courthouse wedding. She said the baby came early, 7 months. I believed her. When Tommy was born, I remember holding him for the first time. He had a full head of bright red hair. Neither of us had red hair, but Susan smiled and said, "It's from my mother's side." My uncle had the same color. I didn't question it. Because when you love someone, you don't look for reasons to doubt. But as the miles rolled by, I started remembering things I'd ignored. Like that weekend years ago when we stayed at Ellen and Brandon's. I went to grab a beer from the fridge and heard voices in the kitchen, Ellen's and Susan's. Ellen said quietly, "You need to tell him, honey. He deserves to know." I froze in the hallway. When I asked Susan about it later, she smiled, brushed my cheek, and said, "Oh, Mom's just being dramatic again." And I let it go. God, how blind I was. The rain got worse as I turned off the highway. The sign for Maple Grove Lane appeared, their street. The same one where Tommy used to chase fireflies every summer. I parked in front of their house. The porch light was glowing yellow. I could see Ellen's silhouette through the window, setting the dinner table. When she opened the door and saw me standing there, soaked and trembling, her face went white. "Michael? What's wrong?" I didn't even try to calm myself. "Where is he?" I said, my voice shaking. Her brows furrowed. "Who?" "You know damn well who. Tommy's father. The real one." Brandon appeared behind her, confused. "Michael, what are you talking about?" I stepped inside, dripping rainwater on their floor. "Don't play dumb. He's in the hospital, and the doctor says I'm not his biological father. So I'm going to ask this once. Who is?" Ellen's lips trembled. Her hands covered her mouth. Tears filled her eyes instantly. Brandon sank down onto the couch, his face pale. And in that silence, that thick, terrible silence, I already knew. Ellen's eyes filled with tears before she even spoke. Brandon sat on the couch, his hands clasped, his face gray. No one said a word. Just the sound of rain hitting the windows and my own breathing, sharp, uneven. Finally, Ellen whispered, "Michael, please sit down." "I don't want to sit down," I said through my teeth. "I want the truth." Brandon looked at her, then at me. "He deserves to know, Ellen." Ellen nodded weakly and sank into the armchair. Her hands were trembling. "It was a long time ago," she began. "Before you and Susan met. She was in college, her junior year at the University of Oregon. She fell in love with someone we didn't approve of." I felt my chest tighten. "Who?" "His name was Oliver," Ellen said softly. "Oliver Gray. He was in her literature class. Brilliant, but lost. He partied too much, skipped classes, had no plans. Her father, Brandon, told her she needed to end it." Brandon sighed, guilt washing over his face. I just wanted what was best for her. Oliver wasn't going anywhere. I didn't think he'd ever hold a real job. Ellen continued, they broke up, or at least, she told us they did. But a few months later, she came home crying. She said she'd made a mistake. That she was pregnant. I felt the blood drain from my face. Ellen's voice cracked. She said she couldn't tell Oliver. He'd already left town. And she didn't want to raise a child alone. When she met you, she thought, maybe this was her chance to build a life, a family, to fix things. She said you were kind, stable, that you'd make a wonderful father. I clenched my fists. She used me, I whispered. She was scared, Ellen said quickly. She didn't plan it this way. She really did love you, Michael. Love me? I laughed bitterly. She lied to me every day of her life. She looked me in the eyes and lied. Ellen's tears streamed down her cheeks. She didn't mean to hurt you. She couldn't bear the thought of losing you both. I looked around their living room, the same one where we'd opened Christmas presents, where Tommy had once built a fort out of pillows. Now it felt like a museum of lies. I ran my hands through my hair and began pacing. Where is he now, Oliver? Do you know where to find him? Brandon hesitated. Last we heard, he moved to Bend, Oregon. Runs some kind of outdoor gear shop, I think. But that was years ago. We didn't stay in touch. Bend. That was over 150 miles away. Do you have any pictures of him? I asked. Ellen rose slowly and walked to the hallway. A few minutes later, she returned with a dusty old photo album. She sat beside me, opened it to a page filled with college photos. Susan smiling, holding books, her hair blowing in the wind. Then I saw him. Oliver. Tall, thin, with fiery red hair and that kind of careless grin that screamed youth and arrogance. I stared at the picture, and for the first time I understood. Tommy. The same eyes. The same freckles. The same exact shade of red. My heart broke all over again. Ellen whispered, she never stopped blaming herself, Michael. The night before she died, she told me she wanted to tell you the truth. But she was so weak, and she never got the chance. I slammed the album shut. I can't believe this. All these years, and you both kept it from me. Brandon's voice was low. We were afraid. You'd already lost her. We thought if you knew the truth, you might walk away from Tommy. And we couldn't bear to lose him too. I turned to them, shaking. I would never have walked away from him. He's my son, maybe not by blood, but he's my boy. Ellen reached for my hand. I know that now. And I thank God you stayed. I pulled my hand away. Spare me the gratitude. What matters now is finding that man, Oliver. Because if we don't, Tommy could lose more than his father. He could lose his future. It was almost midnight when I got back in my truck. The rain had stopped, but the streets were slick and empty. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, staring at my reflection in the windshield. How do you forgive a ghost? How do you look at the face of a woman you loved, the mother of your child, and accept that she built your entire life on a lie? And yet, under all the anger, there was something else. Fear. Tommy's time was running out. The next morning, I started calling every number I could find. I Googled Oliver Gray, Bend, Oregon. I got 2 hits. One was a high school teacher, the other ran a small outdoor store called Trailfront Outfitters. That had to be him. I called the store. A young woman answered. Trailfront Outfitters, this is Jamie. How can I help you? Hi, I said, trying to sound calm. I'm looking for Oliver Gray. Is he available? He's not in right now, she said. Can I take a message? No, I said quickly. It's urgent. It's about someone named Susan Miller. There was a pause. Wait, Susan Miller? He used to talk about her sometimes, a long time ago. Who is this? I'm her husband, I said quietly. And I need to find him. It's about a child. About Tommy. The line went silent for a moment. Then she said, he usually comes in around 10. You can probably catch him then. I hung up, grabbed my keys, and headed straight for Bend. The drive took almost 3 hours. The sky was overcast, the road winding through the mountains. Every mile felt heavier. I stopped once, at a small diner off the highway called Rusty's Diner and Grill. The kind of place where the coffee's burnt and the waitress calls everyone sweetheart. I sat at the counter, staring into my cup. The world outside the window looked blurry, like it didn't belong to me anymore. When the waitress refilled my coffee, she said, "Rough day." I nodded. "You have no idea." She smiled softly. "Well, whatever it is, sugar, don't let it eat you alive. Some things just ain't worth the scars." I smiled weakly. She didn't know how wrong she was. This was worth the scars. Because this was about my son. When I finally reached Bend, I parked outside a wooden storefront with a faded green sign, Trail Front Outfitters. Through the window, I saw a man behind the counter. Tall, red hair streaked with gray, maybe early 40s. Oliver. My heart pounded as I pushed open the door. A bell jingled. He looked up, polite but cautious. "Hey there. Can I help you?" For a second, I couldn't speak. I was staring at the man who, unknowingly, had stolen my life. I swallowed hard. "Oliver Gray? That's me. Do I know you?" "My name's Michael Harrison," I said. "I think you used to know my wife, Susan Miller." His expression changed instantly. The polite smile vanished. He stepped back slightly, like the air had gone cold. "Susan," he said quietly. "Yeah, I knew her. Long time ago." "She's dead," I said flatly. "Been 7 years." He blinked, stunned. I didn't know." I took a deep breath. "She had a son. His name's Tommy. He's 10. He looked confused. "Okay." I stared straight into his eyes. "He's your son, Oliver." His mouth fell open. "What?" "She got pregnant in college. You left town, she married me, told me the baby was mine. I raised him. He's my boy, but right now, he's in a hospital fighting for his life. He needs a bone marrow transplant, and you're the only one who can help." For a long moment, Oliver just stood there, pale, speechless. Then he whispered, "Jesus Christ," and sank onto a stool behind the counter, rubbing his face. I had no idea," he said. "I thought she just moved on. I never knew there was a kid." "She wanted to tell you," I said quietly. "But she never did. And now it might be too late." He looked up, guilt heavy in his eyes. "Where is he?" "St. Mary's Medical Center, Portland." He nodded slowly. "Give me an hour. I'll close up and follow you." As I walked out of the store, the sun finally broke through the clouds. I stood there for a moment, hands in my pockets, watching the light spill across the wet pavement. Part of me still hated him. Another part was grateful he existed. Because without him, Tommy wouldn't stand a chance. I got in my truck, took one last look in the rearview mirror, and whispered, "Hold on, buddy. I'm bringing help." Then I hit the gas and drove back toward Portland, praying I wasn't already too late. The drive back to Portland felt endless. The rain had stopped, but the clouds hung low over the mountains, gray and heavy. The highway stretched ahead like an open wound. I could see Oliver's truck in my rearview mirror, an old red Ford, headlights steady, keeping pace with me. Every few miles, I'd glance back, half expecting him to disappear, half hoping he wouldn't. The sun was already dipping behind the trees when we finally reached the city limits. My phone buzzed, a message from Dr. Myers. "Tommy's condition worsening. Get here as soon as possible." My chest tightened. I hit the gas harder. When we pulled into St. Mary's Medical Center, the parking lot was glowing with harsh fluorescent lights. Oliver parked behind me, stepped out slowly, looking like a man walking into a past he'd buried long ago. His eyes darted around, anxious, uncertain. "This is the hospital?" he asked quietly. "Yeah," I said. "Third floor. Pediatric ICU." He nodded, swallowed hard. "Okay." For a moment, neither of us moved. The silence between us was thick, filled with every unsaid thing. Finally, I said, "He's scared. He needs someone to save him. So whatever you're feeling, put it aside. You go in there, and you do what needs to be done." Oliver met my gaze, and for the first time, I saw it, the same fear I felt. He nodded. "You have my word." Inside, the air smelled like antiseptic and old coffee. The hallways were too bright, too clean, like they were trying to hide how much pain lived here. When we reached the ICU, Dr. Myers spotted me immediately. "Mr. Harrison," he said, hurrying over. "We're losing time. The boy's white cell count is dropping fast. Is this the donor?" I nodded toward Oliver. "His biological father." Myers blinked, startled, then nodded briskly. "We'll need to confirm a match right now. Sir, follow me." Oliver glanced at me once before disappearing behind the lab doors with the doctor. And I was left alone again. I walked to the window outside Tommy's room. He was still there, pale, fragile, so small against the hospital sheets. Machines beeped steadily beside him, keeping time with my heart. A nurse adjusted his four. "You can go in," she said softly. I stepped inside. The air was thick, heavy. I sat down beside him, took his small hand in mine. He stirred, eyes flickering open. "Dad." "Yeah, buddy. I'm here." His lips trembled. "It hurts." "I know." My throat closed. "But you're gonna be okay, you hear me? You're the toughest kid I know." He managed a weak smile. "You always say that." I chuckled softly. "Because it's true." Then he frowned, struggling to speak. "Where were you? The nurse said you left." I froze. What could I tell him? That I'd spent the day chasing down a stranger who shared his DNA? That I just learned our whole life had been built on a lie? I squeezed his hand tighter. "I had to find someone who could help you. Someone special." His eyes fluttered shut again. "Like an angel." "Yeah," I whispered. "Something like that." Half an hour later, Dr. Myers returned. His expression had changed, softer, more hopeful. "He's a match," he said. "A perfect one." Relief hit me so hard I had to sit down. Oliver stood behind him, still pale but calmer now. "What do I have to do?" Myers explained the procedure, the marrow extraction, the anesthesia, the risks. Oliver nodded through it all without hesitation. "When do we start?" he asked. "As soon as possible," Myers said. "We'll prep you both within the hour." They took Tommy to the pre-op wing first. I walked beside the stretcher, holding his hand until we reached the doors where I had to stop. He looked up at me, eyes hazy. "You'll be here when I wake up?" "Always," I said. "I'm not going anywhere." He smiled faintly. "Love you, Dad." It hit me like a knife and a hug at the same time. "I love you more, buddy." Then the doors closed, and he was gone. Oliver stood near the vending machine, staring at the floor. "You don't have to stay," I told him quietly. "Once they take the sample, you can go." He shook his head. "No. I want to be here when he wakes up." I looked at him, really looked. The man who unknowingly fathered my son. The man whose blood could save him. "You didn't know," I said finally. "No," he said. "If I had. God, Michael, if I'd known she was pregnant, I never would have left." He sat down heavily on the bench beside me. "We were young. Stupid. I thought I was doing her a favor by leaving. Her parents hated me. I figured she'd be better off without me dragging her down." I stared at the opposite wall. "She told me you disappeared." He nodded. "Yeah, I did. Took a job in California, thought I'd start over. Turns out you can't outrun who you are. He rubbed his face. How was she? Susan, I mean. Was she happy? I hesitated. For the most part, yeah. But there were days. She seemed haunted. I thought it was just grief after her parents moved away. Now I realize she was carrying this secret the whole time. He looked at me. You must hate her. I sighed. I did. For a few hours, maybe. But hate's easy. Loving someone through the lies, that's harder. An hour later, they wheeled both of them into surgery. Oliver gave me a nervous thumbs up as the doors swung shut. And then I was alone again. Waiting. I must have paced that hallway 100 times. Every sound made me jump, every nurse, every intercom announcement. Finally, after what felt like a lifetime, Dr. Myers emerged. It went well, he said, smiling. The transplant was successful. Tommy's stable. We'll monitor him for the next 48 hours, but it looks promising. I sank into the nearest chair, tears blurring my vision. Thank you. God, thank you. Later that night, I went to check on Oliver. He was in recovery, pale but conscious. When he saw me, he tried to smile. You look like hell, he joked weakly. I chuckled. You don't look much better. He nodded toward the hallway. How's the kid? Stable, I said. You saved his life. He exhaled deeply. Good. For a while, we just sat there in silence. Then he said softly, You're his real dad, you know. Not me. I might share his DNA, but you're the one who raised him. He's yours. I swallowed hard. Maybe. But he deserves to know the truth. One day. He nodded. When he's ready. Before I left, he said something that stuck with me. Thank you for letting me help. I know you didn't have to call. I looked at him and said, You didn't have to come. And somehow, that felt like forgiveness, for both of us. The next morning, I sat by Tommy's bed again. He was awake, color returning to his face. Hey, champ, I said. How are you feeling? He smiled weakly. Like I got hit by a truck. I laughed. You kinda did. He looked around. Where's the angel guy? I frowned. Who? The one you said came to help me. I hesitated. He's resting. He gave you something very special, a part of himself, to make you strong again. Tommy thought for a moment. Then he must be really nice. Yeah, I said softly. He is. For the next few days, things slowly got better. Tommy's color improved, his laughter came back, and the doctors said his body was accepting the transplant beautifully. Oliver stayed in town, visiting the hospital once. He didn't go into Tommy's room, just watched from a distance through the glass. When he caught my eye, he gave a small nod, a silent goodbye. I nodded back. And just like that, he was gone. A week later, Tommy was well enough to go home. The hospital discharged us with a stack of papers and a warning. He'll need follow-ups, but he's going to be okay. That night, we sat on the couch in our living room, watching cartoons. The same couch where Susan used to fall asleep with Tommy curled beside her. He leaned against me, sleepy-eyed. Dad. Yeah, buddy. Do you think Mom can see us from heaven? I swallowed hard. Yeah, I think she can. He smiled. Then she knows I'm okay. I kissed the top of his head. She does. Weeks passed. Life slowly found a new rhythm. Tommy started walking again. First with help, then on his own. Every step felt like a miracle. One evening, I found myself driving without a destination. The sunset painted the sky orange and gold, and somehow, it reminded me of Susan's hair. I ended up at Riverside Park, the same place we used to ride bikes every Sunday. I sat on a bench, watching the water move. Calm, steady, endless. In my pocket was an envelope, a letter Ellen had given me before we left her house. She said Susan wrote it the week before she died but never mailed it. I hesitated, then opened it. The handwriting was faint, familiar. My dearest Michael, if you're reading this, it means I didn't get the chance to tell you everything I should have told you long ago. I was afraid you'd hate me, afraid you'd take Tommy and leave. But mostly, I was afraid of losing the love we built together. You were my safe place. My best decision. And though Tommy isn't your son, he is your soul's child. You gave him everything his real father never could: stability, kindness, laughter. Please don't let my mistake take that away from him. Or from you. If there's a heaven, I'll spend it thanking you for the life you gave us. Love always. Susan. By the time I finished reading, my hands were shaking. I sat there for a long time, watching the river flow, letting the tears fall. I wasn't angry anymore. Just grateful. Because she was right. Tommy was my soul's child. A month later, I got a postcard in the mail. No return address, just a photo of the mountains near Bend. On the back, a short note. Tell the kid his angel is rooting for him. Oh. I smiled. The next Sunday, Tommy and I got back on our bikes. His helmet was new, bright blue again, with a fresh Spider-Man sticker. Ready to race, Dad, he shouted. I grinned. You sure you're up for it, kiddo? You've been through a lot. He smirked. You're just scared I'll beat you again. I laughed. Maybe I am. We took off down the trail, wind in our faces, sunlight cutting through the trees. And for the first time in a long time, I felt whole. Not because everything made sense, but because love didn't need to. I built a life on a lie. But the love I gave was real. And maybe that's what being a father truly means. Not sharing blood, but sharing your heart. What do you think? Was I right to find the truth? Or should some secrets stay buried forever? Tell me in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on channel Next Chapter Life Stories if this story touched your heart.